Hello everyone, this is the Insta 360 1-inch edition and we're going to test it against a GoPro after I run you through all the specs. This camera came out about 3 years ago and it still has the largest sensor you can get in an action style camera. It's fully modular and it breaks apart. I also bought the 1-inch 360 camera because all the parts are interchangeable and it just sounded too good to be true. The 1-inch sensor is like $550, super expensive, and wildly unpopular for very good reason, so you better watch the video. The massive sensor, the 1-inch sensor here, is very bulky, gets in the way of the touchscreen, and is just huge. I have the RS brain and the 1R brain to test, so we'll compare those in a second. I think the RS is going to be better because it's a little bit newer of a computer to process the footage. Now, you would think when it's snapping together, this thing would be kind of flimsy, but once it's attached, it's super solid. That was one of my first concerns. You can flip the screen both ways. I find it best on the front, even though that huge sensor gets in the way. You're really gonna need it on the front to see what you're doing. Two different battery options, that's the original and the boosted battery. I have an aftermarket cage, a metal cage, and it's pretty massive. I wouldn't recommend this cage because it's kind of heavy. These style of cameras have the most annoying memory card slot. Every single camera I see is losing the door and it's super hard to take it out. You got to use tweezers to pull the memory card out. Absolutely horrible design. I mean, that's not a deal breaker, but it is super annoying. The internal microphone on this camera sounds like it's from 1995, and you need to add this little module that costs $17 to use an aftermarket microphone, and it's absolutely required, making another headache. The camera can only shoot in 4K in regular mode to get the inbuilt stabilization. Otherwise, you need to throw it into their app and make another headache when you're editing. As much as I hate the GoPro touchscreen, it's starting to look more attractive. They're both about the same size, but that 1-inch sensor is just ginormous and gets in the way of everything. But you can see how massive it is, so we're gonna test the low light here in a second because that's the only reason I got this camera. To add insult to injury, you need to remove the 1-inch sensor lens guard and microphone jack to stick this inside of the cage. You would have to do all that to do a battery change when you're filming, making another pain in the butt. We should start counting how many pain in the ass things are on this Insta 360 1-inch edition. Once the Insta 360 is caged up, we can see how massive it is and it's super heavy with the boosted battery. The GoPro is starting to look more attractive. Insta 360 1R module plugged in. 1R module plugged in. This is 4K regular with the inbuilt stabilization. We're not going to run it through the app because it's super annoying to do so. Original module, low light capability. Low light capability. I would personally at this point run from the 1R module. It's completely out of date. I'm going to try it with the RS module, see if it gets better. Insta 360 in-camera microphone. Lavalier plugged in. Lavalier plugged in. Testing shake. Okay, we're testing low light capability. Low light capability. Now, if we look at the big camera, we can see how bright it is inside of this camera. And we're going to check how bright it is inside of this camera. Now, please take a guess on which computer is which. On the right has a lot more noise. That's the older 1R computer. On the left is the newer RS computer. Now, the big question, let's throw some GoPro footage in. In the middle is the GoPro footage, and it just looks absolutely terrible, to no surprise. The 1-inch sensor with the RS computer behind it looks pretty darn good there on the left, to be honest. Now, if you watch GoPro's ads, they're all in perfect lighting for good reason. They suck in low light. Testing, shake. Testing, shake. The inbuilt stabilization in the 1-inch edition Insta 360 is honestly not very good. And the sound, even with the lavalier, doesn't sound that great. External lavalier plugged into the GoPro in the low light setting. So I do a lot of biking and shaking and low light. I absolutely despise GoPros, but the sound is better and the stabilization is better, but the footage is terrible. So we have lavalier plugged in. With the external microphone adapter, the 1R, the older computer for the Insta 360, does not even work, and it's absolutely the worst noise you've ever heard. So trying to make things simple by just importing straight from memory card into Final Cut, the Insta 360 is generating LRV files. These are the most annoying low quality files you absolutely never want to deal with in your entire existence. GoPro even has this figured out. I do a lot of mountain biking, and this is the 1R, the older module with the 1-inch sensor, and it is pretty shaky. It's 5.3K stabilized through their software. The color science is terrible, the stabilization is terrible, the microphone doesn't work, and I'm not even gonna let you listen to it because you might leave the video.
Okay, we got the 5K.
Adding a little color grade on it almost looks worse. It's like way oversaturated. I don't really color grade. It's kind of not needed for YouTube. It's all about the idea of the video. Now this is a GoPro 10 with the media mod on, 4K 24 frames a second, a few little settings. The color science is completely acceptable. It's a much better processor. Now the GoPro's not perfect. A lot of times it'll just glitch out and not work, but the color science and the sound is a lot better. Now I want you to take a guess on which one is which. On the left is the color graded Insta360 1-inch edition with the 1R module. On the right is the GoPro. Now let me explain the workflow of the Insta360 1-inch edition. Okay, so you have to load the footage into the Insta360 app, stabilize it, and then export it. It took 1 hour for a 10-minute clip of 5.7K to stabilize, unusable sound, no lavaliers working with it, and horrible color science. Completely unacceptable. I'm ready to throw this thing in the trash can. Trying to find some kind of use case for the Insta360 1-inch edition with the 1R module. I put it on a tripod, and as you can see, the color science isn't very good. It was a little bit of a windy day, and watch the camera shake when it's on a tripod. It is like the worst stabilized camera ever made. This is unprocessed 5.3K, and it's just absolutely terrible footage, completely unusable. There is absolutely zero reason you should buy a 1R module. It's absolutely terrible. So this is the RS module, the updated module with the 1-inch sensor, plugged in to my chest mount on the mountain bike, and I took it out into some low light conditions to test it out against GoPro. Now I want you to listen to the audio out of the 1-inch edition with the lavalier plugged in.
RS module plugged into the Insta360, testing the sound out, but unfortunately the lighting is still pretty good.
Now with an external microphone, the audio is completely unusable and just absolutely terrible. Now I want you to listen to the audio out of the raw camera.
Okay, we're testing GoPro on the chest in the low light setting. We want to hear the sound out of GoPro too.
It's not even scratch audio out of the camera. It's just absolutely atrocious. Now the color is okay, but the stabilization is pretty terrible straight out of the camera. Like, this is not an action camera. This is I don't know any use case for this camera, to be perfectly honest. Now, I want you to keep in mind, I absolutely hate GoPros, and that's why I bought the Insta360 1-inch edition. And let's compare it on the same section of trail.
Low light setting. We want to hear the sound out of the GoPro too. We got the Insta360 on the handlebars, so we can hear the native sound out of both cameras.
I don't have to compare very much. On the left is the Insta360, and it does pick up more light because the sensor is bigger, but the stabilization is very amateur, and the audio is completely unusable. The GoPro on the right has a lot more noise, but it has perfect audio, and it's pretty usable footage, to be honest, even though it's a little bit noisy. I highly recommend you do not buy these modular Insta360 cameras, and click this video on the screen because we're going to take a look at the Insta360 1-inch edition, the 360 version of it, and see if it's any better.